The estate was burning, not with fire, but with ruin. Standing at the altar in a chapel that smelled of candle wax and old shame, Duke Rowan Halverick felt the walls closing in. His cravat was too tight. His family's debts were tighter. Somewhere behind him, servants whispered. Ahead, the priest waited. And beside him, nothing yet. No bride, no escape. Just the crushing weight of a name that meant less than it used to. His father's ghost might as well have been laughing from the grave. This wasn't a wedding, it was a ransom. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, New York, Lagos, Seoul, wherever, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button, and let's dive into the wreckage together. The morning Rowan Halverick married a woman he'd never met, the sky hung low and gray like a lid over a grave. Snow had fallen overnight, blanketing the Halverick estate in silence so thick it felt suffocating. The gardens were buried. The fountain had frozen mid-spray, a monument to stillness. Even the birds had the sense to stay quiet. Rowan stood before the mirror in his dressing room, adjusting his cravat for the fourth time. His hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from cold, from rage, maybe. Or fear. He couldn't tell anymore. "Stop fidgeting," his cousin Marcus said from the doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. "You look like you're being led to the gallows." "I am," Marcus snorted, dramatic as ever. Rowan turned on him. "You want to trade places? Go ahead. Marry the merchant's daughter. Save the family name yourself." Marcus raised his hands in mock surrender. "Easy, cousin. I'm not the one with the crumbling estate and creditors circling like vultures." Rowan's jaw clenched. He turned back to the mirror. The man staring back at him looked like a stranger, hollow-eyed, pale, wearing a suit that cost more than most families earned in a year. A suit purchased on credit. Everything in this room, in this house, was purchased on credit, on borrowed time. "She's here," Marcus said quietly. Rowan's stomach dropped. "Already?" Carriage just pulled up. Small party. Her father, a maid, maybe one or two others. Efficient people, the Vances. Rowan said nothing. His throat felt like it was closing. Marcus stepped inside, his voice softer now. "You could still look at her, you know, before the ceremony. It's not too late to saw." "No." "Rowan, I said no." Rowan's voice was cold, final. "I'll see her at the altar, not before." Marcus sighed. "Pride's a hell of a thing to die on. It's all I have left." That shut Marcus up. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Each second felt like a nail being driven into a coffin. "They're saying she's scarred," Marcus said eventually. "The bride, badly scarred, some accident when she was young." Rowan didn't respond. "They're also saying she's clever, too clever for her own good, that her father couldn't marry her off, so he had to buy her a husband instead." "Wonderful," Rowan muttered. "We're both charity cases." Marcus laughed, but it was bitter. "Perfect match, then." Tuck. The chapel was small, cold, and empty except for the people who mattered least. A handful of distant relatives who'd shown up to gawk. The family solicitor, stone-faced and clutching his ledger like a lifeline. The priest, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. And Marcus, standing at Rowan's side because someone had to. Rowan stood at the altar, staring at the stained glass window above. It depicted some saint or another, hands raised in supplication. He wondered if the saint had ever been forced into a corner like this. Probably not. Saints got martyrdom. Rowan got a marriage contract. The doors creaked open. Rowan didn't turn. He heard the footsteps, slow, measured, deliberate. No hesitation, no shuffling. Whoever she wasn't afraid. Marcus nudged him. "Look at her, at least." "No." "Rowan, let her come to me." The footsteps stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the priest cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" Rowan finally turned and froze. She stood 3 feet away, perfectly still, her hands clasped in front of her. The dress was simple, cream-colored, high-necked, no lace, no frills. Her hair was dark, pulled back severely, and her face, the scar ran from her left temple down to her jaw, a pale, jagged line that twisted the corner of her mouth slightly upward. It wasn't hidden. She'd made no attempt to hide it. She stood there, staring directly at him, and her eyes were the coldest gray he'd ever seen. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't do anything. Rowan realized he was staring. Duke Halverick, she said. Her voice was low, steady, with a faint edge he couldn't place. Shall we get this over with? He blinked. Yes. The priest launched into the ceremony. Rowan barely heard it. His mind was reeling. This was Alara Vance, the merchant's daughter, the woman his family's survival depended on, and she was staring at him like he was a piece of furniture being appraised. Do you, Rowan Elias Halverick, take this woman? I do, Rowan said flatly. The priest blinked, startled. I wasn't finished. I don't care, I do. Alara's mouth twitched. It might have been amusement. It was hard to tell. And do you, Alara Margot Vance, take this man? I do, she said, cutting him off just as cleanly. The priest looked between them, flustered. Well, then, by the power vested in me, we're married, Rowan said. That's enough. He turned and walked down the aisle without looking back. Behind him, he heard Alara's footsteps, calm, unhurried, matching his pace exactly. The wedding breakfast was a farce. A long table in the estate's dining room, laid out with silver and china that would probably be sold off by spring. Rowan sat at one end, Alara sat at the other. Between them, Marcus tried and failed to make conversation. So, Lady Halverick, Marcus said, pouring himself more wine, how are you finding the estate? Cold, Alara said, without looking up from her plate. Ah, yes. Well, winter, you know. It's not the season. It's the house. Marcus raised an eyebrow. I beg your pardon? Alara set down her fork. The windows are drafty, the fireplaces are poorly maintained, half the chimneys are blocked. No wonder the heating is abysmal. Rowan looked up. You've been here for an hour. Long enough. And you've already inspected the chimneys? I've inspected enough. She met his gaze evenly. If you're going to live somewhere, you should know how it works. Marcus grinned. I like her. Rowan didn't respond. He was still staring at Alara, trying to figure out if she was mocking him. Her expression gave nothing away. The estate will be fine, Rowan said stiffly. We've managed for generations. Managed, Alara repeated. Interesting word choice. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've seen the ledgers. The room went silent. Rowan's face went cold. Those are private. They're my concern now. I'm your wife. Your debts are mine. You had no right. I had every right. Alara's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the room like a blade. My father didn't hand over a fortune so you could squander it on pride and poor decisions. If I'm going to salvage this disaster, I need to know what I'm working with. Rowan's hands clenched into fists. You presume a great deal. I presume nothing. I've been negotiating contracts since I was 16. I know when a man is drowning. Marcus let out a low whistle. Well, this should be an interesting marriage. Rowan shoved his chair back and stood. Excuse me. He left the room without another word. He found her later in the library. She was standing by the window, her back to the door, staring out at the snow-covered grounds. She didn't turn when he entered. You shouldn't have looked at the ledgers, Rowan said. You shouldn't have hidden them. They're not hidden, they're private. Privacy is a luxury you can't afford. Rowan stepped closer. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. Alara finally turned to face him. In the dim light, the scar on her face seemed deeper, harsher. I know you're drowning in debt. I know your father gambled away half the estate before he died. I know you've been scrambling to hold this place together with loans you can't repay. And I know that without my father's money, you'd lose everything by spring. Rowan's chest tightened. You think I wanted this? I think you had no choice. Neither of us did. Then why are you here? Rowan's voice cracked slightly. If you knew what you were walking into, why agree to it? Alara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. Because my father needed me to. That's it? Duty? Isn't that why you're here? Rowan didn't answer, because she was right. Alara crossed her arms. Let's be clear about something, Duke Halverick. I don't expect love, I don't expect friendship. I don't even expect civility. But I do expect honesty. If this marriage is going to work, even as a business arrangement, we can't lie to each other. Fine, Rowan said bitterly. Here's honesty. I didn't want to marry you. I didn't want to marry anyone. I wanted... He stopped himself. Wanted what? Nothing. It doesn't matter. Elara studied him for a moment. You loved someone. Rowan's head snapped up. What? You loved someone, and you lost them. That's why you're so angry. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Alara's gaze didn't waver. I know that look, Duke. I've seen it in the mirror. For a moment, Rowan couldn't speak. The air between them felt heavier than it should. Her name was Isabel, he said finally. His voice was barely above a whisper. She was everything. And she died. 3 years ago. Fever. Elara said nothing. I was going to marry her, Rowan continued. We had plans, a life, and then she was gone, and I... He shook his head. I didn't want this. I didn't want to replace her. I'm not replacing anyone, Elara said quietly. I'm just here. Rowan looked at her, really looked at her, the scar, the cold eyes, the rigid posture. She wasn't soft, she wasn't warm, but she was present, solid, real. Separate rooms, Rowan said abruptly. Elara blinked. What? We'll have separate rooms, separate lives. You manage the finances, I'll manage the estate. We'll attend events together when necessary, but otherwise, he trailed off. Otherwise, we stay out of each other's way. Yes. Elara considered this. Agreed. Rowan nodded. Good. He turned to leave. Duke Halverick. He paused. You should know something, Elara said. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. I don't break easily. Whatever you think of me, whatever society thinks of me, I've survived worse than their whispers. I'll survive this marriage too. Rowan looked back at her. For the first time, he saw something flicker in her eyes. Not warmth, not softness, but strength. The kind that came from being broken and put back together without anyone's help. I believe you, he said, and he left her standing there, alone in the cold light of the library. The first weeks of their marriage passed in tense, brittle silence. They barely spoke. They barely saw each other. Rowan spent his days riding the estate grounds, inspecting tenant farms, avoiding the manor. Elara spent hers locked in the study, poring over ledgers, writing letters, making decisions without consulting him. It should have been a relief. It wasn't. Rowan found himself thinking about her more than he wanted to admit. The way she moved through the house, quiet, efficient, never wasting a step. The way the servants started listening to her, the way she'd reorganized the household staff in a week and somehow made everything run smoother. Marcus noticed. You're staring, he said one evening over dinner. Rowan blinked. What? At your wife. You're staring at her. Rowan glanced down the table. Elara was reading a letter, ignoring both of them. I'm not. You absolutely are. She's efficient, Marcus grinned. That's one way to put it. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair, that you're starting to notice her, and it's making you uncomfortable. I notice her because she's taken over my house. Your house was falling apart. She's fixing it. Rowan scowled. Whose side are you on? Truth's side. Marcus raised his glass. And the truth is, cousin, you married someone who might actually be your equal. That terrifies you. Rowan didn't respond, because Marcus was right. The breaking point came 3 weeks into the marriage. Rowan was in the stables when one of the grooms approached him, nervous. Begging your pardon, your grace, but Lady Halverick wants to see you, in the south wing. Rowan frowned. The south wing was closed off, had been for years. Structural damage, his father had said, too expensive to repair. Why? She didn't say, sir, just said it was urgent. Rowan found her standing in the middle of what used to be the ballroom. The ceiling was half collapsed. The floor was rotted in places. Dust and debris covered everything. What are you doing in here? Rowan demanded. Elara didn't turn. She was staring up at the ceiling. This can be repaired. It's not worth the cost. It is if we're going to host. Rowan stared at her. Host what? A ball, spring, before the season starts in the city. Are you out of your mind? No. Elara finally looked at him. I'm being practical. If we're going to restore this family's reputation, we need to show strength. Hiding won't do that. Hosting will. We can't afford. We can. Alara pulled a folded paper from her pocket and handed it to him. I've renegotiated 3 of your loans, consolidated the rest. We have room to breathe now, enough to make repairs and host an event. Rowan stared at the paper. The numbers were better, significantly better. How did you? I told you. I've been doing this since I was 16. Alara's voice softened slightly. Your creditors respect competence. I gave them a repayment plan that actually works. They agreed. Rowan looked up at her. Why? Why what? Why are you doing this? You could have taken the money and left, filed for separation. You didn't have to. I made a deal, Alara said simply. I keep my deals. They stood there in the ruined ballroom, dust motes drifting in the weak winter light. For the first time since the wedding, Rowan felt something other than resentment. He wasn't sure what it was. Respect, maybe? Or the beginning of something like trust. All right, he said quietly. We'll host a ball. Alara's expression didn't change, but he saw the tension leave her shoulders. Good, she said. Then we have work to do. And for the first time, Rowan didn't walk away. Done. The repairs began the next week. Contractors, carpenters, masons, all swarming the south wing like ants. Alara oversaw everything, and to Rowan's surprise, she was good at it. Better than good. She negotiated prices, coordinated schedules, made decisions on the spot without hesitation. Rowan found himself working alongside her. At first, it was out of obligation, then curiosity, then something else. She didn't soften, didn't smile much, but she was fair. When a worker did good work, she paid them extra. When someone tried to cheat her, she caught it immediately and cut them loose without hesitation. You're ruthless, Rowan said one afternoon, watching her dismiss a supplier who'd tried to overcharge. I'm efficient, Alara corrected. There's a difference. Is there? She glanced at him. Ruthless means cruelty for its own sake. I'm not cruel, I'm just clear. About what? About what I will and won't tolerate. Rowan studied her. What happened to you? Alara's expression shuddered. What do you mean? The scar. You said it was an accident. It was. But, she was quiet for a long moment, but it wasn't just the scar. It was everything that came after. Like what? Alara turned away. That's not a conversation for a construction site. And she walked off, leaving Rowan standing there, more curious than ever. Oh, that night he found her in the library again. She was sitting by the fire, a book in her lap, but she wasn't reading. She was staring into the flames. Can I ask you something? Rowan said from the doorway. Alara didn't look up. If you must. He stepped inside. Why didn't your father arrange a marriage for you earlier, before this? Before he had to buy me a husband, you mean? I didn't. It's fine. It's a fair question. Alara closed the book. He tried. When I was 17, a merchant's son. Nice family, good prospects. What happened? He saw the scar and withdrew the offer. Rowan winced. There were others, Alara continued. A few. They all had the same reaction. Some were polite about it. Some weren't. She shrugged. Eventually, my father stopped trying, and I stopped hoping. That's practical, Alara finished. That's what it is. I'm not bitter, I'm just aware. Rowan sat down across from her. I'm sorry. Why? You didn't do it? No, but He hesitated. I didn't even look at you before the wedding. I refused to. That was cruel. Alara finally met his gaze. You were scared. I was angry. Same thing sometimes. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. Outside, snow began to fall again. Can I ask you something now? Alara said. All right. Do you still love her? Isabel. Rowan's chest tightened. I don't know. I thought I'd never stop, but now. He trailed off. Now what? Now I'm not sure what I feel. Alara nodded slowly. That's honest, at least. You said you wanted honesty. I did. She paused. So here's some from me. I don't expect you to love me. I don't think I even want that, but I do think we could stop making each other miserable. Rowan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. I'd like that. For the first time, Alora almost smiled. It wasn't much, just a faint softening at the corner of her mouth, but it was something. Then let's start over, she said. Not as strangers, as partners. Rowan stood and extended his hand. Partners. Alora took it. Her grip was firm, steady, warm. And for the first time since the wedding, Rowan thought maybe, just maybe, this marriage didn't have to be a prison. Maybe it could be something else entirely. That handshake changed something. Not everything. Not overnight. But enough. The next morning, Rowan found Alora in the dining room earlier than usual, surrounded by fabric samples and sketches. She looked up when he entered, and for once she didn't immediately return to her work. Good morning, she said. Morning. Rowan poured himself coffee, eyeing the chaos on the table. What's all this? Plans for the ball. I need to decide on drapes for the ballroom and the entrance hall. She held up 2 swatches, one deep burgundy, one forest green. Which do you prefer? Rowan blinked. She was asking his opinion, actually asking. The green, he said after a moment. It'll match the woodwork better. Alora studied the fabric, then nodded. You're right. She set it aside and made a note. I'll order it today. Rowan sat down across from her. This was new, different, almost normal. How much of this are you doing yourself? He asked. Most of it. I've hired a coordinator for the day itself, but the planning… She gestured at the papers. This is faster if I handle it. You don't trust anyone else. I trust people to do what they're paid for, but vision? Alora shook her head. That's harder to delegate. Rowan found himself almost smiling. You're a control obsessive. I prefer the term thorough. She glanced at him. And you're one to talk. I've seen how you inspect the stables. That's different. How? Horses are important. So are ballrooms, apparently. They looked at each other, and something shifted. Not tension, not quite ease either, but a kind of rhythm starting to form between them. Marcus walked in, took one look at the table, and groaned. Please tell me we're not talking about curtains at breakfast. Drapes, Alora corrected, and yes. I'm eating in the kitchen. Coward, Rowan called after him. Alora's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Progress. The weeks that followed fell into a pattern. Mornings they spent on the estate, Rowan handling the grounds and tenants, Alora managing the household and finances. Afternoons they worked together on the ball preparations. Evenings they ate dinner in something resembling companionship, though neither pushed for more. Rowan noticed things, small things, the way Alora took her tea with too much sugar, the way she rubbed her temples when she'd been reading ledgers too long, the way she never asked for help but accepted it when offered. And she noticed him too. He caught her watching sometimes, when he worked with the horses, when he laughed at something Marcus said. Her expression was always carefully neutral, but her eyes gave her away. She was studying him, learning him. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt fair. One afternoon, Rowan found her in the south wing, standing in the middle of the restored ballroom. The ceiling had been repaired, the floor refinished. New chandeliers hung from the beams, crystal catching the light. It's beautiful, he said. Alora turned. It will be. Once the drapes are up and the furniture arrives. No, I mean now. It's already beautiful. She looked around, and for a moment something softened in her face. My mother would have loved this room. Rowan stepped closer. Would have? She died when I was 12. I'm sorry. Alora shrugged, but the gesture was tight. It was a long time ago. That doesn't make it easier. She glanced at him, surprised. No, it doesn't. They stood there in the empty ballroom, sunlight streaming through the tall windows. Rowan wanted to ask more about her mother, about her past, about the scar she still wouldn't discuss. But he sensed the walls going up again, so he didn't push. The ball is in 3 weeks, Alora said, changing the subject. We need to finalize the guest list. I'll leave that to you. No, her voice was firm. We do it together. These are your peers, Rowan. I need to know who matters and who doesn't. Rowan hesitated. All right, tonight, after dinner. Good. As she walked past him toward the door, Rowan caught the faint scent of lavender. He hadn't noticed before. Or maybe he just hadn't let himself notice. That night they sat in the study with the guest list spread between them. Alara had compiled names from society registers, but she needed Rowan's insight. Lord Ashford, she read. Invite? No. Why not? He's an ass. Alara raised an eyebrow. That's not helpful. He spread rumors about my father. After the debts came out, said we were finished. Were those rumors true? Rowan's jaw tightened. Some of them. Then he wasn't wrong, just tactless. Alara made a note. We invite him. If we exclude everyone who gossiped, the ballroom will be empty. I don't like it. You don't have to like it. You just have to survive it. She moved to the next name. Lady Margrave. Yes, she's harmless. Mostly. Mostly? She talks too much, but she's kind. Alara nodded and marked the name. They continued like that for an hour, Rowan explaining the dynamics, Alara strategizing. It was strange working together like this, almost like being a team. What about the Carringtons? Alara asked. Rowan went still. What? Alara looked up. What is it? Isabel was a Carrington. The air in the room shifted. Alara set down her pen carefully. Should I cross them off? Rowan wanted to say yes, wanted to avoid the whole thing, but he thought about what Alara had said, about surviving, not hiding. No, he said finally. Invite them. Are you sure? No, but do it anyway. Alara studied him for a long moment, then marked the name. All right. They finished the list in silence. When Alara finally stood to leave, Rowan spoke. Thank you. She paused. For what? For not making this harder than it has to be. Alara's expression softened just slightly. We're partners, remember? Yeah, I remember. She left and Rowan sat alone in the study, staring at the guest list. The Carringtons. He'd have to face them, face the memories, face everything he'd been running from. He poured himself a drink and tried not to think about how much harder this was going to get. The invitations went out a week later. Responses came back quickly, mostly acceptances. The ton was curious. A reclusive duke suddenly hosting? A merchant's daughter playing Lady of the Manor? It was too good to miss. They're coming to gawk, Marcus said, reading over the responses. You know that, right? Let them, Alara said calmly. They can gawk all they want, as long as they see a functioning estate and a united household. United, Marcus repeated, grinning at Rowan. Hear that, cousin? You're united now. Rowan ignored him, but Marcus wasn't entirely wrong. They were united, in purpose, if not yet in feeling. Alara managed the staff with quiet authority. Rowan handled the estate repairs and grounds. Together, they transformed the manor from a crumbling relic into something that almost looked prosperous again. The servants noticed. Mrs. Henley, the housekeeper, started smiling more. The grooms worked faster. Even old Thomas, the groundskeeper who'd been with the family for 40 years, remarked that the place hadn't felt this alive in decades. It's her, Thomas said to Rowan one morning, nodding toward where Alara stood directing the gardeners. Lady Halverick, she's got spine. That she does, Rowan agreed. Begging your pardon, your grace, but you could do worse. Rowan looked at the old man. What's that supposed to mean? Thomas just smiled and went back to his work. But the comment stuck with Rowan. You could do worse. It was true. He could have been married to someone frivolous, someone cruel, someone weak. Instead, he had Alara, stubborn, relentless, unbreakable Alara. He was starting to realize that might not be a bad thing at all. 3 days before the ball, disaster struck. Rowan was in the stables when Marcus came running, out of breath and wild-eyed. We have a problem. Rowan looked up from the saddle he was mending. What kind of problem? The kind where half the wine shipment just got redirected to the wrong estate, the musicians canceled because their lead violinist broke his hand, and your wife is about to murder someone. Rowan dropped the saddle. Where is she? Study, and Rowan. She's really angry. He found Alara standing behind the desk, knuckles white as she gripped a letter. Her face was pale, except for 2 spots of color high on her cheeks. What happened? Rowan asked. The wine merchant claims he never received our deposit, says the order was never confirmed. Her voice was dangerously calm. I have the receipt right here, signed and dated. He's lying. Obviously, Alara set the letter down with controlled precision. But that doesn't solve the problem. The ball is in 3 days. We have no wine and no musicians. Rowan thought fast. The musicians? I know someone. A quartet from the city. They've played here before. I can send for them. Will they come on 3 days' notice? If I pay them enough. He paused. What about the wine? Alara's jaw set. I'm handling it. How? I'm going to the merchant myself. Alara, don't! She held up a hand. Don't tell me it's unseemly or that I should send someone else. This is my event, my reputation. I'm going. Rowan recognized that look. He'd seen it in the mirror often enough. Then I'm coming with you. She blinked. You don't have to. I know, I'm coming anyway. For a moment, Alara looked like she might argue. Then she nodded. Fine, we leave in an hour. The merchant's warehouse was in the city, a 2-hour carriage ride through slush and cold. Alara spent most of the journey silent, staring out the window. Rowan didn't push for conversation. He recognized someone preparing for battle. The warehouse was exactly what Rowan expected. Dark, cramped, smelling of oak barrels and old cork. The merchant, a portly man named Greaves, met them with an oily smile that vanished when he saw Alara's expression. Lady Halverick, what an unexpected pleasure. Save it! Alara pulled the receipt from her bag and slapped it on his desk. You received our deposit, you confirmed our order, now you're trying to claim otherwise. Why? Greaves barely glanced at the paper. My records show no such transaction. Your records are wrong. Or perhaps, my lady, you are mistaken. I am not mistaken. Alara's voice could have cut glass. I have the signed receipt, a copy of the bank transfer, and a letter from your own clerk confirming the order. You received our money. Now you owe us wine. Greaves shifted uncomfortably. There may have been a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. You took a better offer and decided to break our contract. The merchant's face reddened. Now see here. Rowan stepped forward. He'd been silent until now, but he'd had enough. Mr. Greaves, I suggest you honor the agreement, unless you'd like the entire ton to know you're a cheat and a liar. Greaves sputtered. You can't prove. She just did. Rowan gestured at the papers on the desk. And I'm a duke. She's my wife. Who do you think society will believe? The threat hung in the air. Greaves looked between them, calculating. Finally, his shoulders slumped. The wine will be delivered tomorrow, he muttered. Today, Alara corrected. That's impossible. Then make it possible. Or we go to the magistrate. Your choice. Greaves swore under his breath. Fine. Today. By nightfall. Good. Alara gathered her papers and turned to leave. Rowan followed. They were halfway to the carriage when Alara stopped and turned to him. Thank you. Rowan shrugged. You didn't need my help. You had him cornered. Maybe, but you backed me up. That mattered. They looked at each other, and Rowan felt something shift again, deeper this time. This wasn't just partnership. This was something more, something that felt like trust. Come on, he said. Let's get home before we freeze to death. The wine arrived that evening, just as promised. The musicians confirmed the next morning. By the night before the ball, everything was in place. Rowan found Alara in the ballroom doing a final inspection. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hair coming loose from its pins. You should rest, he said. I will, after I'm sure everything's ready. It is ready. You've done everything possible. Alara turned to him. What if it's not enough? What if they come and see through it all, see that we're just pretending? It was the first time Rowan had heard her sound uncertain, vulnerable. He crossed the room and stood in front of her. Then we pretend together, and we make them believe it anyway. Alara let out a shaky breath. I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you can. You've been doing it your whole life. This is different. Why? Because this time I'm not alone. And if I fail, I take you down with me. Rowan reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were ice cold. You won't fail, and even if something goes wrong, we'll handle it. Together. Alara's eyes searched his face. Why are you being kind to me? Because you're my wife, and because you deserve it. For a moment he thought she might cry, but she didn't. She just squeezed his hand once, quickly, then let go. Tomorrow's going to be hell, she said. Probably. We should sleep. Probably. Neither of them moved. Finally, Alara stepped back. Good night, Rowan. Good night. She walked away and Rowan stood alone in the empty ballroom, his hand still warm from where she'd held it. Tomorrow was going to be hell, but for the first time in months, he didn't feel like facing it alone. The morning of the ball dawned clear and bright, a small mercy. Rowan was up before dawn, too restless to sleep. He found Alara already in the ballroom, supervising the final arrangements. She was wearing a simple day dress, her hair tied back, directing servants with calm efficiency. Did you sleep at all? Rowan asked. A little. You? Not much. She almost smiled. Nervous? Terrified. Good. Me too. They worked side by side throughout the morning, adjusting flowers, repositioning furniture, checking every detail. The house buzzed with activity. Servants rushed everywhere. Deliveries arrived in waves. And through it all, Alara remained steady, a fixed point in the chaos. By afternoon, everything was ready. The ballroom gleamed, the entrance hall was transformed. Even the gardens looked presentable despite the lingering snow. Marcus appeared, dressed for the evening, and whistled low. I'll be damned. You actually pulled it off. Don't sound so surprised, Alara said dryly. I'm not surprised. I'm impressed. Marcus grinned. You're a miracle worker, cousin-in-law. I'm practical, there's a difference. Rowan left them talking and went to change. His formal wear was laid out, black coat, silver waistcoat, cravat so white it almost glowed. He dressed slowly, carefully, his hands steadier than he expected. When he came downstairs, guests were already beginning to arrive. And then he saw Alara. She stood at the top of the main staircase, and Rowan forgot how to breathe. Her gown was deep emerald green, the same shade as the drapes she'd chosen. The neckline was high, the sleeves long, the cut elegant without being ostentatious. Her hair was swept up, revealing the scar on her face. She hadn't tried to hide it. Diamonds glittered at her throat and ears. Her mother's, Rowan guessed. She looked like a queen. Their eyes met across the foyer. For a moment, the noise faded. There was only her, standing there, looking at him like she was waiting for something. Rowan crossed to the base of the stairs and held out his hand. Alara descended slowly, her expression unreadable. When she reached the bottom, she placed her hand in his. You look beautiful, Rowan said quietly. Alara's breath caught. You don't have to. I'm not being polite. I'm being honest. Her fingers tightened on his. Thank you. The first guests were announced, Lord and Lady Ashford, then the Margrave family, then more, a steady stream of nobility and gentry, all curious, all watching. Rowan and Alara stood together, greeting each arrival. He felt her tension in the way she held herself, but her voice never wavered. She was poised, gracious, every inch the Duchess. And then the Carringtons arrived. Rowan felt Alara stiffen beside him. She'd noticed his reaction, Isabel's parents, her younger sister. They approached with careful smiles, and Rowan forced himself to meet Lord Carrington's eyes. Duke Halverick, what a pleasure. Lord Carrington, Lady Carrington. Rowan's voice was steady. May I present my wife, Lady Alara Halverick? Alara curtsied perfectly. Welcome. Lady Carrington's gaze swept over Alara, lingering on the scar. Her expression flickered, surprise, perhaps, or pity, but she recovered quickly. What a lovely home you have, Lady Halverick. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the evening. The Carringtons moved on, and Rowan realized he'd been holding his breath. That wasn't so bad, Alara murmured. No, it wasn't. But the night was far from over. The ballroom filled quickly. Music played. Wine flowed. People danced and talked and laughed. And on the surface, everything was perfect. But Rowan saw the whispers. The sidelong glances at Alara. The way certain ladies grouped together, their fans raised, eyes calculating. Alara saw it too. He could tell by the set of her shoulders, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. Dance with me, Rowan said suddenly. Alara blinked. What? Dance with me. Now. Rowan, I don't think. I'm not asking. He held out his hand. Dance with me. She hesitated, then took his hand. They walked onto the floor together, and the room quieted slightly. The musicians struck up a waltz. Rowan placed his hand on Alara's waist, and they began to move. She was stiff at first, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, but Rowan held her steady, guiding her through the steps. Everyone's watching, Alara whispered. Let them. They're talking about me. Let them talk. Rowan, look at me. His voice was firm but gentle. Just look at me. Alara's gray eyes met his, and for a moment the ballroom fell away. There was only the music, the movement, and the woman in his arms. You're doing fine, Rowan said quietly. Better than fine. I don't know if I believe you. Then believe this. I'm proud to have you as my wife. Alara's step faltered. Don't say things you don't mean. I mean it. And he did. Somewhere between the wedding and now, between the arguments and the handshakes and the late nights planning this impossible ball, he'd started to mean it. The dance ended. The room applauded politely. Rowan led Alara off the floor and other couples took their place. Thank you, Alara said softly. Before Rowan could respond, Marcus appeared at his elbow, looking worried. We have a situation. What now? Lady Ashford just cornered Alara's father in the card room. She's asking pointed questions about the marriage contract. Rowan swore under his breath. Where's Alara? Talking to the vicar's wife. She doesn't know yet. Keep it that way. I'll handle Ashford. He found Lady Ashford holding court in the card room, her voice carrying over the quiet conversations. Alara's father, a stern man with sharp eyes, stood stiffly nearby. Simply curious, Mr. Vance, Lady Ashford was saying. A marriage arranged so quickly. One does wonder about the motivations. Motivations are simple, Vance replied coldly. My daughter is married to a duke. That's all that matters. Of course, of course. Though one hears such stories about the Halverick finances. Good evening, Lady Ashford. Rowan stepped into the room, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I see you've met my father-in-law. Lady Ashford's smile turned brittle. Duke Halverick. We were just gossiping? Yes, I heard. Rowan smiled pleasantly. Perhaps you should save your energy for the dancing. The floor is quite lovely this evening. It was a dismissal, clear as day. Lady Ashford's face flushed, but she curtsied and swept out without another word. Vance looked at Rowan with something like approval. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. She was insulting my wife. Alara can handle insults. I know, but she shouldn't have to, not tonight. Vance studied him for a long moment. You've changed your tune, Duke. When we negotiated this marriage, you could barely look at me. I was angry and stupid. And now? Rowan met the older man's gaze squarely. Now I'm grateful. Your daughter is remarkable. Vance's expression softened slightly. She is. And she deserves better than I could give her. Better than most of your kind would give her. I'm trying. See that you keep trying. The evening wore on. More dances, more wine, more conversations that felt like tests. Rowan stayed close to Alara, a silent presence at her side. She didn't ask for his support, but she didn't push it away either. Near midnight, they found themselves alone on the terrace, stealing a moment of quiet. It's going well, Alara said, staring out at the snow-covered gardens. It is. They're still talking about me. Of course they are. You're interesting. Alara laughed, bitter and sharp. That's one word for it. Rowan turned to face her. Listen to me. You threw a ball that half the ton will be talking about for months. You negotiated contracts, managed renovations, and faced down a cheating merchant. You did all of that in less than 2 months. That's not just interesting. That's extraordinary. Alara looked at him, and in the moonlight her eyes were wet. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Being kind. Defending me. Dancing with me in front of everyone. Because you're my wife, Rowan said simply. And because somewhere along the way, I stopped resenting that. Alara's breath came out in a shaky exhale. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. They stood there on the terrace, the sounds of the ball drifting out through the open doors. And for the first time since the wedding, Rowan felt like they were on the same side. Not just partners, not just allies, Something more. Something that might, eventually, become real. Inside, the music swelled. Outside, the night pressed close. And between them, something fragile and new hung in the balance, waiting to see if either of them was brave enough to reach for it. Rowan didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening in his mind. The ball had been a success. He could admit that now. But it wasn't the ball that kept him awake. It was the moment on the terrace, the way Alara had looked at him, the way his chest had tightened when she'd asked why he was being kind. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped resenting that. The words had come out before he could stop them, and now they hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. He heard footsteps in the hallway outside his room, soft, hesitant. They paused near his door, then continued on. Alara's room was 3 doors down. He wondered if she couldn't sleep either. The morning after the ball, the house was eerily quiet. Servants cleaned up the remnants, empty wine glasses, wilted flowers, chairs pushed out of place. Rowan found Alara in the study, sorting through a stack of calling cards left by guests. "Already working?" he said from the doorway. She didn't look up. "These need responses. The sooner, the better." Rowan stepped inside. "Can it wait an hour? You barely slept." "I slept enough." "Alara." "I'm fine, Rowan." Her voice was clipped, professional. The walls were back up. He recognized the retreat. Something had shifted last night, and now she was pulling away, protecting herself. He wanted to push, to ask what she was afraid of, but the look on her face stopped him. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll be in the stables if you need me." He turned to leave. "Rowan," he paused. "Thank you for last night, for everything." He looked back at her. She was still staring at the cards, her fingers gripping them too tightly. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I know, but I am." He left her there, surrounded by paper and duty, and wondered how long she'd been carrying everything alone. 3 days later, Marcus burst into the breakfast room with the newspaper clenched in his fist. "Have you seen this?" Rowan looked up from his coffee. "Seen what?" Marcus slammed the paper on the table. "This." The headline screamed across the gossip column. "Merchant's daughter plays Duchess, the Halverick ball examined." Rowan's stomach dropped. He scanned the article. Most of it was backhanded praise. The decorations were surprisingly tasteful. The food, adequate for a household in transition. Alara herself poised despite her unfortunate background. But it was the final paragraph that made his blood run cold. One cannot help but wonder if Lady Halverick's sudden marriage was less a love match and more a financial arrangement. Sources close to the family suggest the Duke's debts were considerable and the Vance fortune timely indeed. Still, credit must be given. The lady has done well with what little she was given. One almost forgets she's merely playing at nobility. "Bastards," Marcus muttered. "Who writes this drivel?" Rowan didn't answer. He was staring at the byline. Anonymous, of course. But the details were too specific. Someone at the ball had fed information to the papers. Someone who knew about the debts. "Where's Alara?" he asked. "I don't know. Haven't seen her this morning." Rowan found her in the library, standing by the window with the same newspaper in her hands. She didn't turn when he entered. "You've read it," he said. "Yes." "Alara, they're not wrong." Her voice was flat, empty. "It was a financial arrangement. I am a merchant's daughter. I am playing at nobility." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" She finally turned to face him. Her eyes were dry, but her face was pale. "I don't belong here, Rowan. We both know it. Last night was a performance, and apparently not a very convincing one." "That's not what the article says." "It's exactly what it says, just wrapped in prettier words." She set the paper down carefully. "I knew this would happen. I thought maybe we had more time before they came for me." Rowan crossed the room and grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. You belong here because this is your home now. You earned it. You saved this estate, saved my family's name. Those people at the ball? Half of them would have lost everything if they'd been in my position. You didn't lose. You won." "Did I?" Alara's laugh was bitter. "Then why does it feel like I'm still fighting?" "Because you are. We both are." Rowan's grip tightened. "But you're not fighting alone anymore. Do you understand that?" Alara stared at him, and for a moment he thought she might believe him. Then she pulled away. "I need to be alone." Alara, so please. He let her go. Watched her walk out of the library with her spine straight and her head high, every inch the Duchess she claimed she wasn't. And he stood there, furious and helpless, wondering who the hell had betrayed them. The answer came 2 days later. Rowan was meeting with the estate manager when Marcus appeared in the doorway, looking grim. "We need to talk. Now." They went to Rowan's study. Marcus closed the door and locked it. "I found out who leaked the story," Marcus said without preamble. Rowan's hands clenched. "Who?" "Lord Ashford. He was bragging about it at his club yesterday. Said the Halvericks needed to be reminded of their place." Rowan's vision went red. "That son of a—" "There's more." Marcus's voice was tight. "He's not just spreading gossip. He's calling in your debts, the ones Alara renegotiated. He bought them up from the other creditors last week. All of them." The world tilted. "What?" "He owns your debt now, Rowan. All of it. And he's demanding full payment immediately." Rowan sat down hard. The numbers swam in his head. Even with Alara's renegotiations, paying everything at once would be impossible. They'd have to sell the estate. Everything. "Why?" Rowan's voice was hoarse. "Why would he do this?" Marcus hesitated. "You insulted him. At the ball. In front of his wife. He's making you pay for it." "I defended Alara. He was interrogating her father." "I know. But men like Ashford don't care about justice. They care about pride." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "And now he's going to destroy you for it." Rowan's mind raced. There had to be a way out. There had to be. "Does Alara know?" he asked. "Not yet." "Don't tell her." "Not yet." "Let me think." "Rowan, there's no time to think. Ashford's giving you 2 weeks. After that, he goes to the courts." 2 weeks. 2 weeks to come up with a fortune they didn't have. Rowan closed his eyes. "Leave me. I need to figure this out." Marcus left reluctantly. Rowan sat alone in the study, staring at nothing, feeling the walls close in again. He didn't tell Alara, not that day, or the next, or the one after that. He told himself he was protecting her, that she'd already been through enough, that he could fix this himself. But the truth was simpler. He was afraid of seeing disappointment in her eyes, afraid of proving that he was exactly what everyone said, a failure, a man who couldn't even protect his own house. He threw himself into work, riding the estate from dawn to dusk, avoiding the manor, avoiding her. Alara noticed, of course. She always noticed. "You're avoiding me," she said one evening, cornering him in the hallway. "I'm not—" "Don't lie to me, Rowan. You promised honesty, remember?" He couldn't meet her eyes. "I'm busy." "With what? You've inspected every inch of this estate 3 times over. You're not busy. You're hiding." "I'm not hiding." "Then what's wrong?" Her voice softened. "Talk to me." For a moment, Rowan almost did. Almost told her everything about Ashford, the debts, the impossible deadline, but the words stuck in his throat. "Nothing's wrong," he said. "I just need some space." Alara's expression went cold. "Fine. Take all the space you need." She walked away, and Rowan knew he'd just made everything worse. The next morning, Rowan found Marcus waiting for him in the stables. "We need to talk about Ashford." "There's nothing to talk about." "Rowan, I said there's nothing to talk about." Rowan's voice cracked. "What do you want me to say, Marcus? That I'm ruined? That I failed? That everything we built is about to come crashing down? I want you to stop being a martyr and ask for help." "From who? Alara?" Rowan laughed bitterly. "She's already saved me once. How many times am I supposed to lean on my wife before I admit I'm useless?" "You're not useless. You're scared." "Same thing." Marcus grabbed his arm. "Listen to me. Alara is your partner, your wife. She has a right to know what's happening, and she might actually be able to help." "How? We don't have the money. Even with her father's fortune, we can't pay Ashford in 2 weeks." "Maybe not, but she's smarter than both of us combined. Let her try." Rowan wanted to argue, but he knew Marcus was right. He found Alara in the gardens, walking among the bare rose bushes. The afternoon light caught the scar on her face, turning it silver. She looked tired, worn down, and Rowan realized with a jolt of guilt that he'd put that exhaustion there. "Alara." She didn't turn. Come to push me away again? No, I came to apologize. That got her attention. She faced him, her expression guarded. For what? For shutting you out, for lying. Rowan took a breath. And for being too proud to ask for help. What do you need help with? So he told her. Everything. Ashford buying up the debts, the 2-week deadline, the impossible amount owed. He watched her face as he spoke, waiting for anger or disappointment, or worse, pity. But Alara just listened, her expression growing colder and harder with every word. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. How long have you known? She asked finally. 5 days. 5 days. Her voice was dangerously soft. You've known for 5 days, and you didn't tell me. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? Alara's laugh was sharp. From what? Reality? Partnership? Or were you trying to protect yourself from admitting you needed me? Rowan flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? You said we were partners, Rowan. You said we were in this together. But the moment things got hard, you shut me out, just like everyone else. I'm not like everyone else. Aren't you? Her eyes blazed. You talk about honesty, about trust, about working together. But when it matters, you still see me as the merchant's daughter who bought her way in, not your wife, not your equal. That's not true. Then why didn't you tell me? Her voice cracked. Why didn't you trust me? Rowan had no answer, because she was right. He'd kept it from her, and in doing so, he'd proven exactly what she'd always feared, that he still saw their marriage as a transaction, not a partnership. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You're right. I should have told you immediately. Yes, you should have. Alara wiped at her eyes angrily. But sorry doesn't fix this. We have less than 10 days now. 10 days to come up with a fortune. I know. Do you have any ideas? No. Alara nodded slowly. Then I suggest we start thinking. She walked past him toward the house, her shoulders rigid. Rowan followed, feeling like he'd just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. They spent the next 3 days in the study, going through every option. Selling land, not fast enough. Borrowing from other sources, no one would lend to them with Ashford circling. Appealing to Alara's father, he'd already given everything he could spare. There has to be something, Alara muttered, staring at the ledgers. Some asset we're missing. There isn't. Rowan's voice was hollow. We're out of options. I refuse to accept that. Accepting it or not doesn't change reality. Alara slammed the ledger shut. Stop. Just stop feeling sorry for yourself for 1 minute and help me think. I am thinking. No, you're wallowing. There's a difference. She stood and paced. Ashford wants to destroy us. Fine. But there has to be a way to fight back. He owns the debts, Alara. Legally, he has every right to collect. Legally, yes. But morally? Alara's eyes narrowed. How did he get the other creditors to sell so quickly? They'd already agreed to the payment plans. Rowan frowned. I don't know. Money, probably. Or leverage. Alara grabbed a piece of paper and started writing. Get me a list of every creditor who sold to Ashford. And Marcus. I need Marcus. Why? Because he drinks with half the ton. He'll know things. She looked up at Rowan. Trust me. Please. Rowan nodded. I trust you. Marcus arrived within the hour. Alara spread the list of creditors across the desk. I need information, she said, about each of these men. Debts, scandals, business dealings, anything that might explain why they sold to Ashford so easily. Marcus scanned the list. You think Ashford coerced them? I think Ashford is methodical, and desperate men make mistakes. It took Marcus 2 days to gather the information. When he came back, he looked shaken. You were right, he said, handing Alara a folder. 3 of the creditors were being blackmailed. Business scandals Ashford threatened to expose unless they sold. The 4th one owed Ashford money from a bad investment. The fifth is interesting. How so? Alara asked. Lord Pembroke, he sold his stake for half what it was worth. When I asked around, people said he was terrified of Ashford. Wouldn't say why. Alara's eyes lit up. Where does Pembroke live? About 2 hours north. Why? Because we're going to visit him. Rowan stood. Alara, we can't just show up. Yes, we can, and we will. She looked at him. You said you trusted me. Did you mean it? Rowan met her gaze. Yes. Then let's go. They arrived at Pembroke's estate at dusk. It was smaller than Rowan expected, tucked into a valley with dense woods on all sides. The house itself looked neglected, peeling paint, overgrown gardens, shutters hanging loose. A servant answered the door, looking startled. Duke and Duchess Halverick to see Lord Pembroke, Rowan said. The servant stammered something and disappeared. A moment later, Lord Pembroke himself appeared, a thin, nervous man in his 50s, graying hair disheveled. Duke Halverick. Lady Halverick. I wasn't expecting visitors. We won't take much of your time, Alara said smoothly. May we come in? Pembroke hesitated, then stepped aside. They followed him into a sitting room that smelled of dust and old books. What can I do for you? Pembroke asked, wringing his hands. You sold a debt to Lord Ashford, Alara said directly. Our debt. For half its value. I want to know why. Pembroke's face went white. I can't. Can't or won't? Alara's voice was gentle but firm. Lord Pembroke, we're not here to threaten you. We're here because we think Ashford forced your hand. And if he did, we might be able to help. You can't help. Pembroke's voice cracked. No one can help. He has proof. Proof of what? Pembroke sank into a chair, looking defeated. My son. He was caught cheating at cards 3 years ago. Ashford covered it up, paid off the men involved, kept it quiet. But he kept the evidence. Said if I ever crossed him, he'd ruin my family. Rowan felt sick. And the debt? He said if I didn't sell, he'd expose everything. My son would be ruined. We'd be ruined. Pembroke looked at them with desperate eyes. I had no choice. Alara leaned forward. Do you have any proof of this? Letters, documents, anything? No. Ashford's too careful for that. Then how do we know he actually has this evidence? Maybe he's bluffing. Pembroke shook his head. He's not. He showed me. Names, dates, amounts. It was all there. Alara sat back, thinking. Rowan could see her mind working. What if we could get that evidence? She asked. Would you testify to what Ashford did? Testify? Pembroke looked terrified. Against Ashford, he'd destroy me. He's already destroying you. You're living in fear, jumping at shadows. Alara's voice softened. What if we could free you from that? How? Leave that to us. Alara stood. But we'll need your cooperation when the time comes. Pembroke looked between them, torn. Finally, he nodded. If you can truly get that evidence, yes, I'll testify. They left Pembroke's estate as night fell. The carriage ride home was silent for the first hour. Then Rowan spoke. What are you planning? Alara stared out the window. Ashford keeps evidence to blackmail people. That means he has a record somewhere. Documents, proof. You want to find it. I want to steal it. Rowan's eyes widened. Alara, that's illegal? Dangerous? Yes. She looked at him. But it's also the only way. If we can get that evidence, we can expose him. Prove he coerced the creditors. The debts would be invalid. And if we get caught, then we lose everything anyway. Alara's jaw set. But I'm not going down without a fight. Rowan stared at her. This woman who'd been forced into marriage, who'd saved his estate, who was now planning to break into a lord's home to save them both. And he realized something. He wasn't just grateful to her. He wasn't just impressed by her. He was in love with her. The thought hit him like a physical blow. When had it happened? During the ball? Before? Did it even matter? All right, he said quietly. How do we do this? Alara turned to him, surprised. You're agreeing? You said we were partners. Partners don't let each other fight alone. For the first time in days, Alara smiled. It was small, tentative, but real. Then we need a plan, she said. They spent the next 2 days preparing. Marcus thought they were insane, but agreed to help. Alara gathered information about Ashford's London townhouse, the layout, the staff schedules, the security. Rowan practiced lockpicking with tools Marcus procured from sources he refused to name. You're both going to get arrested, Marcus said, watching Rowan fumble with a practice lock. Probably, Alara agreed calmly, but not if we're careful. This is madness. This is survival. The night they chose was moonless, perfect for what they needed. Ashford was hosting a dinner party. Alara had confirmed it through her network of servants and society connections. The townhouse would be busy with guests upstairs, staff distracted. They dressed in dark clothing, faces partially covered. Rowan felt like a criminal. Maybe he was. "Ready?" Alara asked. He looked at her, eyes bright with determination, chin raised, every inch a warrior. "Ready," he said. They approached the townhouse from the back, through the servants' entrance. Alara had bribed one of the kitchen maids for access. The girl let them in, terrified but loyal to the coin Alara had given her. "His study is on the second floor," Alara whispered. "East wing. Follow me." They moved through the dark hallways like shadows. Above they could hear music and laughter from the party. Rowan's heart pounded so hard he was sure someone would hear it. They reached the study. Locked, of course. Rowan pulled out the picks and got to work. His hands shook. "Steady," Alara murmured. "You can do this." The lock clicked. The door swung open. Ashford's study was exactly what Rowan expected. Dark wood, leather chairs, shelves full of books that had probably never been read. And against the far wall, a safe. "There," Alara said. They crossed to it. The safe was old but solid. Rowan examined it, his heart sinking. "I can't open this, not with picks." "Then we find the combination." Alara started searching the desk drawers. "He has to keep it somewhere." They searched frantically, aware that every second increased the risk. Papers, ledgers, correspondence, nothing. "It's not here," Rowan said. "It has to be." Footsteps in the hallway. They froze. The footsteps came closer, stopped outside the door. Rowan grabbed Alara's hand and pulled her behind the desk, crouching low. His mind raced. If they were caught, it was over. Everything. The door opened. Light spilled into the room. Rowan held his breath, pressing himself against the desk. Beside him, Alara was utterly still. Someone entered. Footsteps crossed the room. A drawer opened. Papers rustled. And then a voice, cold, amused, familiar. "You can come out now. I know you're there." Ashford. Rowan's blood turned to ice. Beside him, Alara's grip on his hand tightened until her nails bit into his palm. They stayed frozen behind the desk, every muscle locked, barely breathing. Ashford's footsteps moved closer, deliberate, unhurried. "I said come out." His voice was silk over steel. "Unless you'd prefer I call the magistrate first. Breaking and entering is a serious crime, Duke Halverick." Rowan felt Alara start to rise. He pulled her back down, shaking his head frantically. But she met his eyes with that same cold determination he'd seen in the ballroom, in the merchant's warehouse, in every moment she'd refused to break. She stood. Rowan had no choice but to follow. Ashford stood by the window, holding a glass of brandy, looking utterly unsurprised. He was a tall man, thin and sharp-featured, with graying hair and eyes like chips of flint. He smiled when he saw them. "Lady Halverick, how resourceful of you." He took a sip of brandy. "Though I must say I expected better from someone so clever." "You knew we were coming," Alara said flatly. "Of course. You think I don't monitor my household? The moment that kitchen girl accepted your bribe, I knew." Ashford set down his glass. "I've been watching you fumble through my study for the past 10 minutes. Quite entertaining, actually." Rowan's hands clenched into fists. "You smug bastard!" "Careful, Duke. You're already facing criminal charges. Assaulting a peer won't help your case." Ashford's smile widened. "Though I suppose it hardly matters now. You're finished, both of you." "Why?" Alara's voice cut through the room. "Why go to such lengths? The debts, the blackmail, all of it. What did we do to deserve this? You existed." Ashford's tone was pleasant, conversational. "You see, Lady Halverick, I don't like upstarts. Merchants pretending to be nobility, failures like your husband clinging to titles they can't afford to keep. You're both symptoms of a larger disease, the decline of proper order." "So this is about class," Rowan said bitterly. "This is about knowing your place." Ashford moved toward them. "You insulted me at your pathetic little ball, Halverick. You chose a merchant's daughter over the respect of your peers. You needed to be reminded that names and titles mean nothing without the power to back them up." "You're insane," Alara said. "I'm practical." Ashford picked up a small bell from his desk. "Now, Shall I ring for the magistrate, or would you prefer to leave quietly? I'll give you that much dignity, at least. Rowan felt defeat crushing down on him. They'd failed, completely. Ashford had won, but Alara wasn't moving. Ring it, she said. Ashford raised an eyebrow. I beg your pardon? Ring the bell. Call the magistrate. Alara's voice was steady, clear. Let's see what happens when you try to press charges. You're bluffing. Am I? Alara took a step forward. Because here's what I think, Lord Ashford. I think you won't call anyone, because if you do, you'll have to explain why we were here. And that means explaining the safe, explaining what you keep in it, all those documents you use to control people. Ashford's smile faltered slightly. You have no proof. Not yet. But the moment magistrates start investigating, they'll find it. They'll talk to Lord Pembroke, to the other creditors you coerced. Alara's eyes were cold as winter. And then everyone will know what you really are. Not a lord, a criminal. Those are serious accusations. Are they accusations if they're true? Alara gestured at the safe. Open it. Prove me wrong. The room went silent. Ashford's jaw tightened. He didn't reach for the bell. You've got nerve, I'll give you that, he said finally. I've got nothing left to lose, Alara corrected. You made sure of that, so either call the magistrate or let us leave. Your choice. Ashford stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. You think you've won? Even if I let you walk out of here, I still own your debts. I can still destroy you. Maybe. Alara turned toward the door. But you won't, because now I know your weakness. And what's that? You're terrified of exposure. She looked back at him. You rule through fear and secrets, but secrets only work when they stay hidden. The moment we walked in here, you lost that advantage, because now we know where to look, and we'll keep looking until we find what we need. I'll ruin you first. You can try. Alara took Rowan's arm. Come on, we're leaving. Rowan followed her out, his mind reeling. They walked through the darkened hallways, down the servants' stairs, out into the cold night air. Neither spoke until they were blocks away, hidden in the shadows of an alley. Then Rowan grabbed her shoulders. What the hell was that? That, Alara said, breathing hard, was a gamble. A gamble? Alara, he could have had us arrested, but he didn't, because I was right. He's more afraid of exposure than he is of us. She pulled away, pacing. He won't call the magistrate. He can't risk the investigation. But we still don't have the evidence. We don't have anything. We have time. Alara stopped, facing him. He'll hesitate now. Wonder what we know, what we're planning. That hesitation is all we need. Need for what? To find another way in. Rowan stared at her. You want to go back? Not me. Not you. Alara's eyes gleamed, but someone he won't expect. They returned to the estate at dawn. Marcus was waiting, looking haggard. Thank the you're alive. I've been imagining you both in prison cells all night. Close, Rowan muttered. They explained what happened. Marcus's expression grew darker with each sentence. So Ashford caught you, threatened you, and you, what, threatened him back? More or less, Alara said. You're both insane. Probably. Alara sat down at the desk, pulling out paper. But now we know the safe exists. We know what's in it. We just need to get it. How? Marcus demanded. You can't go back. He'll be watching. No, but he won't be watching everyone. Alara started writing. Ashford hosts a card game every Thursday night. Same players, same routine. The staff will be busy serving drinks, monitoring the game. That's when we go in. We? Marcus said warily. Not us. Someone he doesn't know. Someone who can blend in with the servants. Alara looked up. Someone loyal. You want to bribe another servant? Not bribe. Hire. Properly. With enough money to make it worth the risk. Rowan leaned against the desk. Even if we get someone inside, they still need to open the safe. I'm working on that. Alara pulled out a folded paper. While you were fumbling with the lock, I saw something. Numbers scratched into the underside of the desk drawer, 4 of them. You think it's the combination? Men like Ashford think they're clever, but everyone writes passwords down somewhere. She handed Rowan the paper. It's worth trying. Marcus let out a long breath. This is still insane. Do you have a better idea? Elara challenged. No, but I have a person. Marcus pulled out a card. My valet's cousin. Just moved to the city looking for work. Young, invisible, desperate for money. If we approach him right, he might do it. Elara took the card. Set up a meeting. Today. The young man's name was Thomas Finch, 20 years old, thin and nervous, with hands that shook when Marcus introduced him in a rented room above a tavern. You want me to steal from Lord Ashford? Thomas's voice cracked. Are you mad? Yes, Rowan said honestly, but we're also desperate and willing to pay. How much? Elara named a figure that made Thomas's eyes widen. That's more than I'd make in 2 years. It's also enough to disappear if things go wrong, Elara said. We won't lie to you, Thomas. This is dangerous. If you're caught, Ashford will make an example of you, but if you succeed, she pushed a purse across the table. Half now. Half when you deliver the documents. Thomas stared at the money. Rowan could see the war in his face, fear against need, risk against reward. What exactly would I have to do? Thomas asked finally. Elara laid out the plan. Simple, direct, terrifying. Thomas would hire on as extra staff for the Thursday card game. During the evening, while Ashford was distracted, Thomas would slip into the study. Open the safe using the combination. Take only the blackmail documents, nothing else that might be quickly missed. Get out. Disappear into the London streets before anyone noticed. And if the combination doesn't work, Thomas asked, then you leave. Immediately. Don't try to force it. Elara's voice was firm. We're not asking you to be a hero, just quick and quiet. Thomas looked at the money again. When? This Thursday. 2 days. I need time to think. There is no time, Rowan interrupted. Ashford can call in the debts any day now. We need those documents before that happens. Thomas swallowed hard. Then he reached for the purse. All right, I'll do it. The next 2 days crawled by. Rowan couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He paced the estate like a caged animal, while Elara obsessively reviewed the plan, looking for flaws. It'll work, she kept saying. It has to work. And if it doesn't, then we're ruined, but we're ruined anyway. She looked at him. At least this way we tried. Thursday arrived gray and cold. Rowan spent the morning in the stables trying to calm his nerves. He found Elara in the study that afternoon, staring out the window. Second thoughts? He asked. 1,000 of them. She turned to him. But we're past the point of turning back. Are we? Rowan moved closer. We could run, take what money we have left and disappear. Start over somewhere else. Running is what cowards do. Maybe I am a coward. Elara studied his face. No, you're not. You're terrified. There's a difference. What's the difference? Cowards run before the fight. You're still here. Rowan wanted to kiss her. The impulse came out of nowhere and hit him with startling force. Not because she was beautiful, though she was. Not because she was clever, though she was that too. But because she was brave in a way he'd never been. Because she looked at impossible odds and kept fighting. Elara, don't. She stepped back. Whatever you're about to say, don't. Not now. Not when everything is... She gestured helplessly. We can't afford distractions. You're not a distraction. Yes, I am, and so are you. Her voice softened. After this is over, one way or another, we can talk. But not now. Rowan nodded, swallowing the words. After. After, she agreed. Night fell. They waited in the study, watching the clock. Marcus joined them, bringing reports from his contacts in the city. Thomas is in position, he said. Hired on this morning. Ashford's cook didn't even question it. Good. Elara's hands were clasped tightly in her lap. What time does the card game start? 8. It's 7:30 now. They sat in tense silence as the minutes ticked by. 8 o'clock came and went, then 8:30, 9. At 9:15, Marcus's contact burst through the door, breathless. He's out. Thomas just left Ashford's townhouse. He's heading to the rendezvous point now. Elara was on her feet instantly. Did he get it? Don't know. He'll be at the Boar's Head in 20 minutes. They took the carriage, racing through London streets still slick with recent rain. The Boar's Head was a dingy tavern in a questionable part of the city, exactly the kind of place where no one asked questions. Thomas was waiting in a back room, looking pale and sweating, but he was smiling. I got it. He pulled a leather folder from inside his coat. Everything, just like you said. Alara grabbed the folder with shaking hands. Inside were documents, dozens of them. Letters, receipts, signed confessions, promissory notes, all in Ashford's neat handwriting, all detailing exactly how he'd blackmailed and coerced nearly a dozen people over the past 5 years. This is... Rowan couldn't find words. Proof, Alara finished. Her voice was thick. This is proof. She handed Thomas the second payment. He took it with a shaky grin. Pleasure doing business with you, your graces. But if it's all the same, I think I'll be leaving London for a while. Smart man, Marcus said. Thomas disappeared into the night. Rowan, Alara, and Marcus stayed in the back room, poring over the documents by candlelight. It's all here, Rowan said, reading. Pembroke's son, Lady Hertford's gambling debts, Lord Craven's affair. He's been controlling them for years. And now we control him, Alara said quietly. They returned to the estate before dawn, exhausted, triumphant, terrified of what came next. What do we do with it? Marcus asked. We use it. Alara's voice was steel. We go to Ashford, we show him what we have, and we make a deal. He'll never agree. Yes, he will, because if he doesn't, we'll expose everything, and he cares more about his reputation than revenge. She looked at Rowan. We go tomorrow, both of us. Rowan nodded. Together. They went to Ashford's townhouse the next afternoon, announced this time, proper and formal. The butler looked surprised but showed them to the drawing room. Ashford appeared 10 minutes later, composed and cold. This is unexpected. Is it? Alara set the leather folder on the table between them. We need to talk. Ashford glanced at the folder. His expression didn't change, but Rowan saw the muscle in his jaw tighten. What's this? Open it. Ashford opened the folder. His face went white as he read, then white again. How did you... Does it matter? Alara's voice was calm. What matters is that we have it. All of it. Every piece of leverage you've used to control people for the past 5 years. Ashford's hands were shaking now. You broke into my home, and you coerced innocent people, blackmailed them, destroyed lives to maintain your power. Alara leaned forward. The question is, what happens now? If you expose this, you'll hang for theft. Maybe. But you'll hang for extortion and blackmail and fraud. She paused. Or we could make a deal. Ashford stared at her. What kind of deal? You forgive our debts. All of them. You return the notes to the original creditors with a letter releasing them from the terms you imposed. And you never speak of this again. And in return, we keep your secrets. All of them. These documents disappear. You can go back to your comfortable life, your reputation intact. Alara's eyes were hard. But you stay away from us. Forever. The silence stretched. Ashford looked between them, at Rowan standing solid at Alara's side, at the documents spread across the table, at the trap he'd fallen into. You've thought of everything, he said finally. I learned from the best, Alara replied. You taught me that control is about information, about knowing what people fear. Well, now I know what you fear, and I have the information to destroy you. Ashford picked up one of the documents, read it, set it down carefully. You're more dangerous than I thought. I'm exactly as dangerous as I need to be. Another long silence, then Ashford nodded slowly. All right, we have a deal. Good. Alara pulled out a prepared contract. Sign this, now, while we watch. Ashford read the document, terms of debt forgiveness, written in legal language that would hold up in any court. His hand hesitated over the signature line. If you ever betray this agreement, we won't. If you don't, Alara held out a pen. Sign. Ashford signed. Alara took the document, checked the signature, then folded it carefully into her bag. The debt notes will be delivered to your solicitor tomorrow, Ashford said stiffly, along with letters of release for the other creditors. Good. Alara stood. A pleasure doing business with you, Lord Ashford. I doubt that. Then let's just say it's been educational. She moved toward the door, Rowan following. At the threshold, she paused. One more thing. You said I should know my place. Well, I do. It's right here. Standing, fighting, winning. She looked back at him. Maybe you should learn yours. They left Ashford standing in his drawing room, defeated and silent. Outside, Marcus was waiting with the carriage. He took one look at their faces and grinned. You got him. We got him, Rowan confirmed. The ride home was surreal. Rowan kept expecting something to go wrong, for Ashford to send men after them, for the contract to be meaningless, for reality to crash back down. But nothing happened. The sun kept shining. The streets kept passing by. And slowly, the truth sank in. They'd won. I can't believe it worked, Rowan said. I can. Alara was staring out the window, her expression unreadable. Ashford's entire strategy was based on fear. Once we stopped being afraid, he had nothing. You weren't afraid? I was terrified every moment. She looked at him, but I didn't let him see it. That's the difference, isn't it? Between you and people like him. He uses fear. You face it. Alara's mouth quirked. Is that a compliment, Duke Halverick? It's an observation, and yes. They arrived at the estate as afternoon bled into evening. Servants met them at the door, curious about the sudden trip to London. Alara dismissed them with calm efficiency, and she and Rowan retreated to the study. What do we do with Ashford's documents? Rowan asked. Lock them away, safely, just in case. Alara set the folder in a drawer and turned the key. Insurance. And the debts? We wait for the notes to arrive, verify everything, then… She let out a long breath. Then we're free. Free. The word hung in the air between them. For the first time in months, maybe years, Rowan felt the weight lift from his shoulders. The estate was saved, the debts would be cleared. They'd survived. Alara. She looked up. Yes? I said we'd talk. After. Well, it's after. Her expression shifted, guarded, uncertain. What do you want to talk about? This. Rowan gestured between them. Us. What we've become. What have we become? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. He moved closer. We started as strangers. A transaction. But somewhere along the way that changed. For me, at least. Alara's breath caught. Changed how? I trust you. I rely on you. He hesitated. I don't want separate rooms anymore. I don't want to keep living like business partners. What do you want? I want a real marriage. With you. The words came out rough, unpolished. I want to wake up knowing you're there. I want to fight our battles together. I want… He stopped. I want you. Alara stared at him, eyes wide. Rowan, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Whatever you decide, whatever you want, I'll respect it. But I couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel this. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she crossed the room and kissed him. It was brief, almost hesitant, a question more than an answer. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. I'm scared, she said quietly. Of what? Of this being temporary. Of you changing your mind, of… She looked away. Of not being enough. Alara. Rowan cupped her face, turning her back to him. The scar beneath his thumb was just texture, part of her, no more or less important than anything else. You're more than enough. You've been more than enough since the day you walked into that chapel and refused to flinch. I flinched on the inside. So did I. We both did. He smiled. But we're still here. Alara leaned into his touch. This is terrifying. I know. And complicated. I know that too, and we'll probably make mistakes. Definitely. He kissed her forehead. But we'll make them together. She laughed. A real laugh. Bright and genuine. You're impossible. You're difficult. We're a disaster. We're perfect, Rowan corrected. For each other, at least. Alara kissed him again, deeper this time, and Rowan felt something in his chest unlock. Not completion. They weren't some fairy tale where everything fixed itself with a kiss, but possibility. The promise of something real, something earned, something that might actually last. When they finally broke apart, Alara was smiling. So, no more separate rooms? No more separate rooms. No more separate lives. No more separate lives. Rowan took her hand. We're partners. In everything. Partners, Alara repeated. Then her smile turned sly. And maybe more than that. Definitely more than that. They stood there in the study, holding hands like teenagers, grinning at each other like fools. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the estate in shades of gold. Inside, something new was beginning. Fragile, uncertain, but real. The documents arrived from Ashford 2 days later. Debt notes, all marked paid in full. Letters of release for the other creditors. Everything legal, binding, complete. Marcus verified them with the solicitor, who looked stunned. I've never seen anything like this, the solicitor said. Lord Ashford releasing debts without compensation? It's unheard of. He was convinced, Alara said simply. The solicitor didn't ask how, probably didn't want to know. Word spread quickly. Within a week, society was buzzing with gossip. The Halverick debts, mysteriously resolved. Lord Ashford, suddenly quiet about his crusade against the upstart Duchess. Rumors flew. None of them came close to the truth. They're saying you seduced him, Marcus reported gleefully over dinner. Alara nearly choked on her wine. What? Lady Margrave's theory. She thinks you charmed Ashford into forgiving the debts. That's absurd. That's society, Marcus grinned. Though I prefer Lord Hertford's version. He thinks Rowan challenged Ashford to a duel and won. Even more absurd, Rowan muttered. My personal favorite is from Lady Pembroke. She claims you have blackmail material on half the ton, and Ashford was just the first target. Alara and Rowan exchanged glances. That one hit a little close to home. Let them speculate, Alara said finally. As long as they're talking, they're not digging deeper. Smart, Marcus agreed. Though I have to say, cousin, you two have become quite the legendary couple. The reformed rake and his mysterious wife, defying society, surviving impossible odds. It's very romantic. It's very annoying, Rowan said. It's very effective, Alara corrected. Let them romanticize us. It's better than the truth. But the truth was spreading anyway, in quieter ways. Lord Pembroke came to visit, nervous and grateful. He shook Rowan's hand and thanked Alara with tears in his eyes. You freed my son, he said. Freed all of us. I don't know how you did it, but thank you. You would have done the same, Alara replied. No, I wouldn't have. I was too afraid. Pembroke looked between them. But you weren't, and that's made all the difference. Other creditors came too, quietly, privately. Some thanked them. Others just looked at Alara with new respect. The merchant's daughter, who'd bought her way into nobility, was now the Duchess, who'd taken down a lord. The shift was subtle but undeniable. At social events, conversation stopped when Alara entered. Not from scandal, but from interest. Women who'd snubbed her before now sought her advice. Men who'd dismissed Rowan now treated him as an equal. They're afraid of you, Marcus observed at a dinner party. Good, Alara said calmly. Fear is useful. You sound like Ashford. No, Ashford used fear to control people. I use it to protect myself. There's a difference. And there was. Rowan saw it clearly now. Alara wasn't cruel. She was just done being a victim, done being dismissed, done playing by rules designed to keep her down. She was building something new, and Rowan was building it with her. Months passed. Spring turned to summer. The estate flourished under their joint management. Tenant farms produced record harvests. The house was restored room by room. The gardens bloomed for the first time in years. And their marriage, their real marriage, grew stronger. It wasn't perfect. They still argued. Alara was still stubborn. Rowan still proud. But they learned to talk through problems instead of avoiding them. Learned to trust that disagreement didn't mean disaster. One evening, they stood in the restored ballroom, the same room where they danced at their first ball, where everything had started to change. Do you remember that night? Rowan asked. Every moment. Alara leaned against him. I was terrified. You didn't show it. Neither did you. I was dying inside. Alara laughed. So was I. They stood there in comfortable silence. Through the windows, they could see the estate stretching out, fields and forests, gardens and paths, all thriving again. We did this, Alara said softly. Built this. Together. We did. Rowan pulled her closer. And we're not done yet. No? No. There's still the west wing to renovate. The tenant cottages need repairs. And Marcus says the village needs a new school. A school? Why not? We have the resources now, and you're always saying education is important. Elara turned to look at him, eyes bright. You want to build a school? I want to build whatever you want to build, for as long as you'll have me. She kissed him, quick and fierce. Forever, then. Forever, Rowan agreed. And for the first time since his father died, since Isabel was lost, since everything fell apart, Rowan believed it. Believed in forever. Believed in second chances. Believed that sometimes, out of the worst circumstances, something good could grow. They'd started as strangers forced together by desperation, but they'd become something else entirely. Partners, allies, friends, lovers. And together, they were unstoppable. The school broke ground in September. It was Elara's project from the start, her vision, her planning, her relentless drive to see it through. Rowan watched her transform from the guarded woman who'd arrived at his estate into someone who commanded rooms without raising her voice, who made decisions that changed lives, who looked at problems and saw solutions where others saw only obstacles. The foundation needs to be deeper, she told the foreman one crisp autumn morning, standing in the mud in boots that cost more than most families earned in a month. Winter floods come through here, I won't have children sitting in a building that might collapse. That'll add 3 weeks to the schedule, my lady. Then we add 3 weeks. She turned to Rowan. Can we absorb the delay? We can absorb whatever it takes to do this right. The foreman nodded and went back to work. Elara stayed, watching the workers dig deeper, her arms crossed against the wind. You're happy, Rowan observed. I'm busy. That's not what I said. She glanced at him, and for a moment her expression softened. I am happy. Is that allowed? I think we've earned it. Have we? Elara looked back at the construction site. Sometimes I wake up waiting for it all to fall apart, for Ashford to come back, for the debts to reappear, for someone to remind me I don't belong. You belong here more than anyone. Do I? She kicked at a clod of dirt. I'm still the merchant's daughter, Rowan. I'll always be the merchant's daughter. Building a school doesn't change that. No. It doesn't change where you came from, but it changes where you're going. He took her hand, and where we're going together. Elara squeezed his fingers once, then let go. Come on, we're having lunch with the vicar and his wife. They want to discuss the curriculum. The vicar's wife, Mrs. Ashton, had strong opinions about education, very strong opinions. Rowan sat through an hour of debate about Latin versus practical mathematics, classical literature versus agricultural science, while Elara took notes and asked questions that somehow managed to both challenge and respect every point raised. You should teach rhetoric, Rowan said on the ride home. You're better at it than half the professors I had. I'm just listening. It's not that complicated. You're negotiating. There's a difference. Elara smiled slightly. Maybe. But Mrs. Ashton needed to feel heard. She spent her whole life being ignored because she married a country vicar instead of someone important. Now she has a voice. I wasn't going to take that away. Most people would have. I'm not most people. No, Rowan agreed. You're not. That winter was the harshest anyone could remember. Snow fell in relentless waves, burying roads and trapping families in their homes. Rowan spent days organizing relief efforts, food deliveries, fuel supplies, medical care for those who couldn't reach the village doctor. Elara worked alongside him, her organizational skills turning chaos into coordinated action. She mapped every tenant farm, cataloged every household's needs, and dispatched supplies with ruthless efficiency. How do you keep track of all this? Marcus asked one evening, staring at her color-coded charts. Practice. My father ran his business the same way. Your father ran a trading company, not a duchy. The principles are the same. People need things. You figure out what they need and get it to them. Everything else is just details. Marcus shook his head. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. By February, 3 families had moved into temporary housing at the manor after their cottages collapsed under snow. Elara converted the West Wing into makeshift apartments, organized meal schedules, and somehow kept everyone from killing each other in close quarters. This is madness, Mrs. Henley said, watching children run through halls that had been silent for decades. This is temporary, Alara corrected. By spring, we'll have their homes rebuilt. You can't rebuild 3 cottages by spring. Watch me. She did it. By April, all 3 families were back in new cottages with better foundations, better insulation, and roofs that wouldn't cave under the next heavy snow. Word spread. Other estates started asking for Alara's advice on construction, on organization, on how to actually take care of the people who worked the land. You're becoming famous, Rowan said, reading an invitation to advise Lord Hertford on his estate management. I'm becoming useful. There's a difference. Why not both? Alara set down her teacup. Because fame is what people give you. Usefulness is what you earn. One can be taken away. The other can't. You've thought about this. I've lived it. She stood, smoothing her skirts. Are you coming to the school opening next week? I wouldn't miss it. The school opened on a bright May morning. Every family in the village turned out, along with half the local gentry. The building stood solid and practical. Brick walls, large windows, a bell tower that rang across the fields. Inside, fresh paint and new desks waited for students who'd never had access to education before. Alara stood at the front of the crowd, looking pale but composed. She'd insisted on speaking, despite Rowan's suggestion that he could handle it. I'm not hiding, she had said firmly. Not anymore. Now she cleared her throat, and the crowd quieted. When I came to this estate, she began, I was told I didn't belong, that I was an outsider, that I could never understand what it meant to be part of this community. Someone in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Rowan recognized Lady Ashford's distinctive hat. And they were right, Alara continued. I didn't understand, not at first, but I learned. I learned that a community isn't about blood or titles or how long your family has owned land. It's about what you build together, what you create for the people who come after you. She gestured at the school. This building isn't just for today's children, it's for their children and their children's children. It's a promise that education won't be a privilege reserved for the wealthy, that every child here, regardless of their parents' station, will have a chance to learn, to grow, to become more than circumstances allowed. Her voice grew stronger. I was told I didn't belong, but I do, because I chose to belong. I chose to fight for this place, these people, this future, and I'll keep choosing it, every day, for as long as I live. The crowd was silent. Then someone started clapping, then another, then everyone, a wave of applause that rolled through the gathering. Rowan saw tears on more than a few faces. Alara stepped back, her own eyes bright. Rowan moved to her side and took her hand. That was perfect, he murmured. That was terrifying. Same thing, apparently. The vicar blessed the building. The children rushed inside, their voices echoing off new walls. Parents followed, marveling at the space, the books, the opportunities suddenly opening before their families. And Alara stood watching it all, her hand tight in Rowan's, looking like she might finally believe she'd earned her place. Summer brought visitors. Lord Pembroke came first, bringing his son and a heartfelt thank you gift, a set of rare books for the school library. Other former creditors followed, no longer carrying shame, but gratitude. They'd been freed from Ashford's control, and they knew who to thank. You've built something here, Pembroke said, standing in the estate's gardens with Rowan. Something real. Not just a house or a title, a legacy. Alara built it. I just helped. You chose her. That was the first step. Pembroke smiled. Some men would have let pride destroy them. You let it make you stronger. That night, Rowan found Alara in the library, reading by firelight. She looked up when he entered. Can't sleep? Too much on my mind. She set down her book. Good thoughts or bad thoughts? Good, mostly. He sat beside her. Pembroke said something today. About legacy. About what we've built. And I realized something. When my father died, I thought the Halverick name was finished. That I'd be the last duke, the one who let everything fall apart. He took her hand. But I was wrong. The name isn't finished. It's just beginning. Because of you. Alara's breath caught. Rowan, I mean it. You saved this estate. You saved me. You took a broken man and a dying legacy and turned them into something worth keeping. He squeezed her fingers. I want children with you, Alara. Heirs, not because of duty or tradition, but because I want them to know you, to learn from you, to carry on what you've built. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at their joined hands. When she spoke, her voice was thick. I never thought I'd have that. A family, children. She looked up at him. I thought I'd spend my life alone, managing my father's business maybe, growing old in some counting house, never belonging anywhere. You belong here, with me. I know. I'm starting to believe it. She leaned against him. Children, though, that's terrifying. Everything important is terrifying. Rowan kissed the top of her head. Then we'll be terrified together. By autumn, Alara was pregnant. She kept working through the morning sickness and exhaustion, much to Mrs. Henley's disapproval. You should be resting, my lady. I've rested enough for 3 lifetimes. Alara signed another document. The West Wing renovations won't oversee themselves. But she did slow down gradually, letting Rowan take more of the load. He found he didn't mind. The estate had become something he cared about again, something worth protecting. Marcus visited often, bringing news from London and commentary on their newfound respectability. You're invited to the Duchess of Cambridge's winter ball, he announced one afternoon. We're not going, Alara said immediately. You have to go. Everyone who's anyone will be there. Then we're definitely not going. Alara, I'm 7 months pregnant, Marcus. I'm not waddling around a ballroom making small talk with people who hated me 2 years ago. Marcus looked at Rowan for help. Rowan shrugged. She has a point. You're both impossible. We prefer the term selective, Alara said sweetly. Marcus threw up his hands and left them laughing in the study. The baby came in March, a month early and screaming with healthy lungs. A girl, dark-haired, gray-eyed, with a scowl that reminded Rowan immediately of her mother. She's perfect, he said, holding his daughter for the first time. She's wrinkled and angry, Alara said from the bed, exhausted but smiling. Like I said, perfect. They named her Catherine after Alara's mother. She grew fast, demanding and fierce and utterly fearless. By 6 months, she was ruling the household staff with imperious baby commands. By a year, she was walking early and getting into everything. She's going to be trouble, Mrs. Henley predicted. She's going to be extraordinary, Alara corrected. Same thing, Rowan muttered. 2 years after Catherine came James, quieter but no less determined. Then Rose, bright and laughing. The estate filled with noise and life and chaos that Rowan had never imagined wanting, but now couldn't imagine living without. How did this happen? He asked one evening, watching all 3 children play in the gardens while Alara worked on correspondence beside him. You were there for all of it, Alara said without looking up. I know, but still, sometimes I look around and can't believe this is my life. Our life. Our life, he agreed. The school expanded, then expanded again. Children who'd graduated started teaching younger students. Some went on to universities. Others stayed to work the land, but with knowledge and skills their parents never had. This is what you wanted, Rowan said, watching students pour out of the building one afternoon. This is what we all wanted, Alara corrected. We just needed someone to make it happen. You made it happen. We made it happen. She took his arm. Stop giving me all the credit. You're the one who trusted me enough to try. 5 years after their wedding, an invitation arrived that neither expected. A formal dinner at the palace. The Queen wished to meet the Duke and Duchess Halverick. This is absurd, Alara said, staring at the heavy paper. This is recognition, Rowan corrected. For what? For everything you've done. The school, the estate reforms, the way you've treated your tenants. People notice these things, Alara. People talk. That doesn't mean they care. The Queen invited us. She cares. They went. Alara wore green, the same shade as her wedding ball dress, with her mother's diamonds. The scar on her face was uncovered, visible, undeniable. She'd stopped hiding it years ago. Are you nervous? Rowan asked in the carriage. Completely. You don't look it. I've had practice. The palace was overwhelming, gilt and marble and rooms that went on forever. But the Queen herself was surprisingly practical, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Lady Halverick, I've heard remarkable things about your work. Your Majesty, Alara curtsied. I'm honored. Don't be. I'm practical, not sentimental. The Queen gestured for them to sit. Tell me about your school. So Alara did. Not the polished version she gave at formal events, but the real story, the challenges, the setbacks, the small victories that added up to something larger. The Queen listened intently. When Alara finished, she nodded. You've done what most nobility only talk about. You've actually improved lives. She paused. I'm establishing a commission to study education reform. I'd like you to serve on it. Alara blinked. Me? You have practical experience. You understand both the merchant class and the nobility, and you're not afraid to make difficult decisions. The Queen's expression was almost a smile. Those are rare qualities, Lady Halverick. I intend to use them. Alara glanced at Rowan, who nodded encouragingly. I'd be honored, Your Majesty. Good. My secretary will contact you with details. The Queen stood, indicating the audience was over. And Lady Halverick? Don't hide that scar. It tells a story. Let people read it. They left the palace in a daze. The commission work started 3 months later. Meetings in London, correspondence with educators across the country, policy recommendations that actually got implemented. You're changing things, Rowan said, reading one of her reports. I'm trying. You're succeeding. Alara set down her pen. Do you ever think about how this started? About that morning in the chapel? Every day. I hated you, that first month. I know, I hated me too. She laughed. We were terrible to each other. We were terrified. And now? Rowan moved to her chair and knelt beside it. Now I can't imagine my life without you. Now you're the first person I think of when I wake up and the last before I sleep. Now I'd do it all again. The debts, the fear, the impossible odds, if it meant ending up here with you. Alara's eyes glistened. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said. Is it working? Maybe. She pulled him closer. Say it again. I love you, Alara Halverick. I love your stubbornness and your brilliance and the way you refuse to let anything break you. I love that you fight for what you believe in. I love that you made me believe I could be more than my failures. He cupped her face. I love you. All of you. Everything you are. I love you too. She kissed him softly. Even when you're impossible. Especially when I'm impossible. Especially then. They sat together in the study as evening fell, wrapped in contentment that neither had expected to find. Outside, their children played in gardens that bloomed again. The estate thrived, the school grew, and the future stretched ahead, uncertain but full of possibility. 10 years after their wedding, they hosted another ball. Bigger this time, grander, with guests from across the country. But the heart of it was the same. A celebration of survival, of partnership, of two people who'd been forced together and chose to stay. Rowan watched Alara work the room, commanding respect from everyone she spoke to. The merchant's daughter was gone. In her place stood a duchess who'd earned her title through action, not birth, who'd changed laws and built schools and shown an entire class of people what leadership actually looked like. She's magnificent, someone said beside him. Rowan turned to find Lord Ashford standing there, older now, grayer, but still sharp-eyed. What are you doing here? Rowan asked carefully. I was invited. Your wife has a cruel sense of humor. Ashford took a sip of wine. Or a forgiving one, I'm not sure which. Neither. She just doesn't fear you anymore. No, I suppose she doesn't. Ashford watched Alara across the room. I underestimated her. That was my mistake. It was. You were fortunate, Halverick, to find someone like that, to be smart enough to keep her. I know. Ashford nodded once and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Rowan didn't watch him go. His attention was on Alara, laughing at something Lady Margrave said, her hand resting protectively on her slightly rounded stomach. Their fourth child, unexpected and already loved. She caught his eye across the room and smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine and completely unguarded. Rowan smiled back. Later, after the guests had left and the children were in bed, they stood together on the terrace where they'd once made tentative promises about partnership. Do you remember this spot? Alara asked. Every detail. We were so broken then. We were. Rowan pulled her close. But we fixed each other. Did we? Or did we just learn to live with the cracks? Does it matter? Alara leaned her head against his shoulder. No, I suppose it doesn't. The moon rose over the estate, their home, their hard-won kingdom. The ballroom behind them glowed with candlelight. The garden stretched into darkness, and between them, something solid and real and permanent had taken root. Thank you, Alara said softly. For what? For giving me a chance. For seeing past the scar and the merchant's daughter and everything else. For fighting with me instead of against me. Thank you for not giving up on me. For saving my estate. For saving me. We saved each other. Yes, Rowan agreed. We did. They stood there until the candles burned low and the moon crossed the sky. Two people who'd started as strangers and become everything to each other. Two people who'd faced impossible odds and won. Two people who'd learned that love wasn't always about grand gestures or perfect moments. Sometimes it was just about standing together when everything tried to pull you apart. 20 years after their wedding, Rowan stood in the same chapel where they'd married, watching Catherine walk down the aisle toward her own future. She was marrying a doctor, someone she'd chosen herself, someone who loved her for her mind and her fire and her complete refusal to be anything less than herself. Alara sat beside him, graying now, but still beautiful, still fierce. She squeezed his hand as their daughter passed. She's just like you, Rowan whispered. She's like both of us. She's better than both of us. Isn't that the point? Alara smiled. To raise children who surpass us? When did you get so wise? I was always wise. You just finally noticed. After the ceremony, during the celebration, their grandchildren ran through the gardens while the school Alara had built stood solid in the distance. Students were graduating that week, the 50th class since the school's founding. Some of them would become teachers, others doctors, lawyers, merchants. All of them would carry forward the legacy of education and opportunity. You did this, Rowan said, watching it all. We did this. You keep saying that because it's true. Alara took his arm. Everything we built together. The school, the estate, our family, none of it would exist if we'd let fear win. Or pride. Or pride, she agreed. Marcus approached, older but still grinning, walking with a cane now. Quite a party, cousins. Quite a life, Rowan corrected. That too. Marcus raised his glass. To the Duke and Duchess Halverick, who proved that sometimes the worst circumstances lead to the best outcomes. They drank to that. To survival, to partnership, to love that came from the most unexpected places. As evening fell and guests began to leave, Rowan and Alara found themselves back in the ballroom, the same room where they'd danced that first night, where everything had started to change. One more dance? Rowan asked, holding out his hand. We're too old for dancing. Speak for yourself. Alara laughed and took his hand. They moved slowly across the floor, no music playing, no one watching. Just two people who'd spent a lifetime learning each other's steps. Do you have any regrets? Alara asked. Rowan thought about it. About the years of debt and fear, about losing Isabel, about the bitter man he'd been when Alara first arrived, about all the mistakes and missteps and moments of doubt. No, he said finally. Not a single one. Liar? All right, one regret. What? That I didn't see you sooner. That I wasted even a day being angry at you when I could have been loving you instead. Alara's eyes filled. You romantic fool. You're romantic fool. Forever, she agreed. They danced until the candles burned out, until the moon rose high, until they were the only two people left in the vast, beautiful room. And when they finally stopped, when they finally went upstairs to the bedroom they'd shared for 2 decades, they did so hand in hand. Partners, allies, friends, lovers, and proof that sometimes, just sometimes, the most desperate circumstances could forge the strongest bonds, that forced marriages could become real love, that two broken people could make each other whole. Their story became legend. The merchant's daughter and the bankrupt duke, the woman with the scar, and the man who learned to see past it, the partnership that became a marriage that became a legacy. People told it wrong, of course, made it more romantic than it was, forgot the fighting and the fear and the nights when either of them almost gave up. But they told it. And in the telling, something important survived. The truth that love wasn't always easy or simple or perfect. That sometimes the best things came from the hardest choices. That courage wasn't about never being afraid, it was about being afraid and fighting anyway. Years later, when Rowan was old and tired and his time was running short, he lay in bed holding Alara's hand one last time. "No regrets?" she asked, echoing their dance all those years ago. "Only that I won't have more time with you. We had enough. We had a lifetime." "We had 3 lifetimes," Alara corrected. "The one before we met, the one we built together, and the one we leave behind." Rowan squeezed her hand. "I love you, Alara Halverick." "I love you, Rowan Halverick. Thank you for saying yes, all those years ago, in that cold chapel. I didn't have a choice. Neither did I. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me." Alara smiled through tears. "To both of us." He closed his eyes then, still holding her hand, and slipped away peacefully. Surrounded by family, surrounded by love, in the home they'd saved together. Alara lived 5 more years. She kept working, on the Education Commission, on the estate, on ensuring that everything they'd built would survive them. When her time came, she went quietly. Her children and grandchildren gathered around her, telling stories about the woman who'd refused to be broken by circumstance or society or fear. They were buried together in the estate chapel, beneath a simple stone that read, "Rowan and Alara Halverick, partners in all things." The estate continued. The school grew. Their children carried on the work, then their grandchildren, then generations beyond. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the light slanted just right through the ballroom windows, people swore they could see 2 figures dancing. No music playing, no one watching. Just 2 people who'd found each other in the darkest moment and built something that outlasted them both. A legacy. A love story. A reminder that sometimes the hardest beginnings led to the most beautiful endings. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.